And only on CBS 6 tonight, a closer look at accountability in New York's prison system. A former inmate who successfully sued the state over abuse by corrections officers is sharing his story, shining a light on the role of qualified immunity and shielding officers from consequences. CBS 6's Brianna Sapardi tells us as this comes as the family of Robert Brooks is speaking out publicly for the first time.
His killing must be a catalyst for change. Justice must be served.
Robert Brooks' family breaking their silence, speaking publicly for the first time during a vigil outside Monroe County Jail.
They denied my damn son a second chance. They denied him the second chance to be the best him he was capable of being.
I want my condolences to go out, not blankly, to the family of Mr. Brooks, because when I watched him in agony, I could personally feel exactly what he was going through.
Ricardo Moore was a former inmate at Upstate Correctional Facility, located right across the street from Marcy Correctional Facility.
The very same video that the country has seen on Mr. Brooks is the exact same behavior that we suffered, 33 of us, but it wasn't on tape.
He, along with 27 other inmates, successfully sued New York State after they were brutally attacked by corrections officers in 2016. This legal victory brought some closure, but not enough, as qualified immunity protects officers responsible from personal liability.
Qualified immunity tells these officers it doesn't matter what you do, even if that action is intentional, no one will come towards you and prosecute you civilly for your actions.
Section 24 of the corrections law, you can only sue the state. You cannot sue the individual officers.
If the judge sides with the inmates, then the New York taxpayers are on the hook for the mistakes of the corrections officers.
That is true.
If Mr. Brooks' family wants to sue, they can't sue the individual officers, they have to sue the state.
In state court, yes, they would have to bring it in federal court. It's because New York state law does not provide such a remedy.
Steck introduced a bill in the Assembly creating a process to sue officers and government officials in state court, but it failed to pass in the Senate.
So New York State is the sponge that's going to absorb that abuse. The taxpayers have to pay Mr. Brooks' family for what happened.
I'm Brianna Sapardi, reporters.
Whatever was said, though, was enough for one of those officers to strike him in the rib cage multiple times. Seconds later, though, it's followed with another series of blows. He squirms around before they forcefully raise him up and strike him again in the rib cage. They exchange more words while the other officers seemingly just watch and talk amongst themselves. There's a nurse present as well. Then things escalate to the extreme. Just about 6 minutes into this confrontation, they lift him up by his neck like a doll. He's then placed against a wall by two officers. Their backs are turned. From here, it's unclear what they're doing to him, but they stood in the same position for at least a minute before he's transferred back to the exam table, lifeless. They begin to remove his clothes. The next day, December 10th, Robert Brooks was dead. As for the cause of death, preliminary findings from a medical examination, they indicate, quote, concern for asphyxia due to compression of the neck, as well as the death being due to actions of another, end quote.
I want to reiterate that we are investigating this case thoroughly and using every tool at our disposal to ensure that there is transparency and accountability for the events that preceded Mr. Brooks' death.
Shock, outrage, and frustration from the AG, who has vowed, along with the FBI, to figure out why. New York Governor Kathy Hochul also joining in a statement saying that she's ordered a full investigation into the death of Brooks and asked for the immediate firing of the 14 people listed here, including the nurse, that were all allegedly involved. 3 of them, we've also learned, have been named in previous federal lawsuits from 2022 accused of either failing to intervene in prison beatings or been accused of assaulting inmates themselves. Now, in that statement, Governor Hochul continued and said, quote, that like all New Yorkers, I was outraged and horrified after seeing footage of the senseless killing of Robert Brooks. Once again, I want to offer my deepest condolences to
When do we want it? Now!
The family of Robert Brooks is speaking out tonight. They joined dozens of protesters outside the Monroe County Jail demanding justice. Brooks died December 10th, just one day after being beaten by several corrections officers at Marcy Correctional Facility.
While the state attorney general's office and the FBI investigate, the family and community want action. News 10 NBC's Tom Kowalski was at the protest.
Tonight, hundreds of protesters gathered here outside the Monroe County Jail, calling for just one thing: justice for Marcy Correctional inmate Robert Brooks.
His killing must be a catalyst for change. Justice must be served.
For the first time publicly, the Brooks family spoke to the crowd about his death. Son Robert Brooks Jr. says the community support has been empowered.
Seeing everyone gather here tonight gives me hope that possible is change, and help us know that we are not alone. We demand justice for my son, for his father, her son, his brother, and a host of other family members that are here.
One of those family members was Brooks' aunt, Barbara Brooks. She says it's heartwarming seeing so many people supporting her family, not just in Rochester, but across New York State.
I see that there's different areas of New York that's been protesting as well as here. So just to get the love and support from your hometown, it means the world to me and my family. And I do appreciate everybody that's coming out to support.
In following tonight's protest, in the wake of her nephew's death, Brooks hopes to see a change come to New York's corrections officers.
We would like to get the bad ones out of the system. You know, that's supposed to be reforming our guys to come back home, not killing them. I pray that they get what they deserve. Firing them isn't enough. I want them to do some jail time. I want them to have to suffer the way that he suffered.
And former inmate Robert Allred, who says he was also at Marcy Correctional, says hearing of Brooks' beating was nothing new.
Did 9.5 years. I've been a part of the system who's actively witnessed it, been a part of it, been a victim of the brutality. And this is something that goes on every day within the system. Not just them officers need to be held accountable, the superintendents, that goes all the way up the ladder.
Frederick Douglass said, power concedes nothing without a demand. We're not asking for it. We're not writing a letter and requesting it. We're not stating that it's our constitutional right, and we're not waiting for you to amend the Declaration of Independence or the Proclamation of Emancipation. We want justice, and we want it now.
From Monroe County Jail, Tom Kowalski, News 10 NBC.
Brooks died at a hospital the day after the assault, according to officials, on the morning of December 10th.
2.5 weeks after his death, the New York Attorney General's office today released body cam footage from multiple officers involved. The footage shows them attacking Brooks in the face, body, and neck while he is handcuffed on a table. A medical examiner later described his cause of death as asphyxia due to compression of the neck. A total of 13 corrections officers and a nurse have been implicated in this attack. Tonight's 7 News reporter Michael Schwartz is taking us through the body camera footage and showing us what happened leading up to Brooks' death.
Yeah, and we do want to warn you tonight, the video that you're about to see, it's very graphic and difficult to watch.
Disturbing new body camera footage shows the bloody face of 43-year-old Robert Brooks as he is being beaten by correction officers, struck more than a dozen times, all while handcuffed. It happened the night of December 9th in the infirmary at Marcy Correctional, just outside Utica.
My office investigates every case in which an officer of the law, including a correctional officer, may have caused the death of a civilian.
New York Attorney General Letitia James opened an investigation last week and on Friday released body camera footage from 4 officers' body cameras.
I do not take lightly the release of this video.
That night at 9:21, body camera footage from Sergeant Trombley shows a handcuffed Brooks being escorted outside, his body parallel with the ground. A minute later, he's seen being carried by 3 officers into the infirmary. He's placed on an exam table. At 9:24, video shows this officer with his body cam off walk into the room and shove a cloth in Brooks's mouth. He punches Brooks in the face once, then hits him 3 more times. Then this officer with the backwards hat punches Brooks and smacks him 3 times with Brooks's own shoe. At this point, 8 officers surround Brooks, some just watching. At 9:26, the officer that shoves something in Brooks's mouth can be seen stomping on him. 3 other officers then hold Brooks down as one officer punches him again. Seconds after taking his foot off Brooks, this officer punches Brooks in the rear 3 times. An officer then comes in with leg restraints. By 9:27, just 5 minutes of the 43-year-old being in this room, a winded Brooks is pulled up. The right side of his nose is bloody. An officer changes his gloves and with another officer yanks Brooks up by the collar and presses him against the window. He's held there for 3 minutes before he's put back on the table. Brooks's pants are then stripped off his body. By this point, more than a dozen members of law enforcement are there. Many watching, some seen smiling during the ordeal.
This is horrific.
Norman Effman is an attorney with more than 50 years of experience representing incarcerated individuals and correction officers.
What's going to happen here is clear to me. There's going to be an indictment, and this is going to be a homicide case.
The Times-Union reports that court records accuse 5 officers of hitting Brooks. One of them has since resigned. Meantime, Governor Kathy Hochul has called for the firing of all 14 state employees involved. That includes 2 sergeants and 1 nurse. The family of Robert Brooks has released a statement that says in part, with the Attorney General's release of these videos, members of the public can now view for themselves the horrific and extreme nature of the deadly attack.
New York's Attorney General released this video on Friday, showing the beating of 43-year-old inmate Robert Brooks on December the 9th at the Marcy Correctional Institution. His hands were cuffed behind his back. Brooks died the following morning. Although the officers present had not activated their body cams, half-an-hour footage was recorded in standby mode without audio.
I do not take lightly the release of this video, especially in the middle of the holiday season. But as Attorney General, I release these videos because I have a responsibility and duty to provide the Brooks family, their loved ones, and all New Yorkers with transparency and accountability.
13 correctional officers, sergeants, and a nurse are now under investigation. 1 officer has since resigned, with the others suspended without pay as the inquiry continues. In a statement, the governor of New York expressed what she said was her shock. The state of New York, she wrote, has zero tolerance for individuals who break the law, and I am committed to holding everyone fully accountable. The Correction Officers Union released a statement calling the beating incomprehensible. Yet watchdog groups say they've warned of institutional violence at New York's correctional facilities, quote, for centuries. Not only that, a report in 2023 specifically investigated this facility and found that 80% of inmates have witnessed or experienced abuse there, 70% racial discrimination. And 4 of the officers involved are already defendants in other lawsuits alleging abuse of prisoners, with 2 accused of being members of a so-called beat-up squad at the prison that regularly brutalizes inmates.
Judging by their demeanor and kind of the way people are milling about it, seems really just like business as usual for them. You know, no one seems like there's a rage or shock about what's going on. And it's just, to me, makes me fearful about what else goes on, has gone on inside that prison kind of on a routine basis.
Yet again, authorities in New York will be tested as to whether they are serious about rooting out what's alleged to be endemic violence in its justice system, or will be satisfied with simply blaming a few bad apples for the regularly documented abuse. Shia Bertansi, Al Jazeera.